my ancestors were there when your ancestors arrived on boats. I welcome you to Kahnawà, and we can have a conversation about what our relationship should be and how your people can start packing up.
This is how Grand Chief Cody Diabo welcomed Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet at the Assembly of First Nations last December. He's talking about a larger issue of First Nations being treated like immigrants by the provincial government on their own land.
They used to say there's the St. Lawrence Iroquois. So when Samuel first sailed down the St. Lawrence, the people he met were the St. Lawrence Iroquois, who have no relation to the Mohawks and the people who are here today. They're completely distinct people that just vanished.
For the Grand Chief, it's more than ignoring history.
Traditionally and historically, this was all our territory.
There's concern of grouping First Nations and Inuit in with Quebec legislation that targets immigrants.
It references immigrants, minorities, different things like that, which First Nations could fall under. Are we going to fall under that?
The Grand Chief is referring to Bill 84, which he says the Mohawk Council of Kahnawà only heard about last week. It is an act respecting national integration and was tabled in January of this year.
Le modèle canadien, le multiculturalisme, ne convient pas au Québec.
The intention of the bill is to establish how immigrants will integrate into Quebec's culture and language.
We are yet again extremely disappointed by the approach your government has taken to hastily drafting and debating important legislation without ever discussing this with us.
The Grand Chief sent a formal letter to Quebec Premier Francois Legault expressing the Council's opposition to this bill and for clarification that First Nations and Inuit will not be included. He did not receive a response from Quebec.
What Quebec decides to do with their citizens, that's their right to do, and we always state, we don't want to interfere in that. But when legislation that they're trying to create could have or does have an impact on Kahnawà, then it becomes our business.
Bill 84 does recognize the right of First Nations and Inuit in Quebec to preserve and develop their own culture and language. But the Mohawk Council of Kahnawà believe that's not enough, and it must be invited to discuss legislation that potentially affects Mohawks.
Your continued attempts to legislate lands that are not yours must stop.
Kenneth Deere is a member of the Haudenosaunee External Relations Committee. He compares Bill 84 to Quebec's language law, Bill 101.
We've been fighting language legislation for decades now. It was insulting that we have to ask permission to get our education in English when we're paying for that, for our education. So we objected to that, and so they wouldn't change the legislation to accommodate us.
Kenneth says Bill 101 led to Kahnawà creating its own high school.
Even today, in 2025, we have the province of Quebec trying again, not overtly, but under our radar, trying to get us to become more Quebec, more French, and more culturally French, and at the expense of our language, and our culture, and our freedom, and our sovereignty.
APTN reached out to the minister responsible for First Nations and Inuit relations, Ian Lafrenière. He did not provide a response before our deadline.
If the intent of Bill 84 is not to affect Ngwengwe people, well then clearly state that in the law. Don't kind of leave it open for interpretation because we don't want to be going into a court setting and trying to debate that interpretation at the end of the day if that's not what the intent is.
Bill 84 is still at the committee stage in the Quebec National Assembly. Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Kahnawà, Mohawk Territory.